The government has forecast headline inflation to come in at 1 to 1.5% this year, but most economists are expecting the full-year figure to come in at the lower end of that range. Selina Ling, Head of Treasury Research and Strategy at OCBC, explains the low inflation.
Actually, if you think back in the last 2-3 years, inflation was a major policy concern due to rising asset prices. But I think generally the macroprudential measures have played a very significant part in cooling domestic asset inflation. And then the additional contributing factor really was global commodity prices coming off. So if you put together housing prices, COE premiums, as well as all related items, generally we have seen headline inflation numbers come down to very benign levels.
Earlier in October, inflation came near a 5-year low of 0.1%. The November figure is due next Tuesday, and senior economist at DBS, Irvin Seah, says the headline number could cross into the red.
And in fact, in November, it could actually go into negative. It has something to do with oil prices, but not entirely. There are a lot of policy effect being thrown in. For example, the cooling measures introduced by the government over the past few years is affecting rentals. As a result, accommodation inflation actually has dipped into negative for the last few months.
Controversially, the Republic also topped the rankings this year as the most expensive place for expatriates to live, in a March survey by the Economist Intelligence Unit. That prompted Deputy Prime Minister Tharman Shanmugaratnam earlier this year to say that the cost of living for an expat does not reflect that of an average Singaporean.
From time to time, these surveys will come up. I know some people will give it a spin, but it's measuring something quite different from the cost of living for our residents. What is important for us is that lower and middle income Singaporeans have incomes that grow faster than the cost of living. And in fact, that's what we have fortunately been able to achieve.
And as the country celebrates her 50th birthday next year, it looks like the cost of living is not going to change much. Headline inflation is expected to range between 0.5% and 1.5% in 2015. Regional economist at CIMB Research, Song Seng Woon, says lower oil prices will play a part.
Still going to be a case of where the housing and transport CPI will likely continue to be a drag on headline inflation. I suppose what will also help, certainly in the first few months of the year, is the downward revision that will be likely announced in utility charges coming from the significantly lower energy costs that we're currently seeing. We will certainly see much significant revision for the first quarter.
But Mr. Song adds that core inflation, which excludes private road transport and accommodation costs, will be a different story.
We are still going to see upward pressure coming from our revision to wages in many of the lower paying sector itself, because we are still seeing revisions of wages coming from progressive wage structure that's being implemented, which is why while headline inflation could come in well below government expectation, the MAS core inflation could still be around that current level itself, 1.8 to 2% on a year-on-year basis.
Officially, the government is predicting core inflation of 2 to 3% for next year. Now, to catch up on the previous year-ender stories you have missed, search for Official 938 Live on YouTube.